So I saw a Facebook post recently of City TV News in Toronto claiming that there's going to be a huge shortage of tradespeople, and that is 100% true. Now, the one of the big things that they were saying was that they're cutting programs in like secondary schools, which that was on the horizon even when I was in high school back in from 2009 to 2014. Now, they were cutting back programs for a long time because they're quote unquote dangerous for students or whatnot. And especially in northern communities, I lived in a northern community in Ontario, and it was just getting worse and worse. But one of the reasons you're seeing a huge decline in tradespeople is even when I was in high school, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, I was a pretty intelligent uh, student. I was usually in academic classes. I was actually going to be an engineer. But when I checked out the job markets with my guidance counselor, there was a huge lack of engineering jobs. So there's so many people going into the engineering positions, and that's going to be a huge downfall. That was going to be a huge downfall for me. I would have to go to university, spend $100,000, get $100,000 in debt, and they were pushing a lot of university programs and college programs. And I still ended up going to college for 1 year for pre-trade. So essentially it's a program that teaches you the basics about cars, kind of to get you an entry position into apprenticeships. That's pretty nice. It gives you a good understanding. I did 1 year of heavy equipment in Sault Ste. Marie at a college. Now, one of the big things in Ontario, there's a reason why we left. So we are currently living in Alberta, and we're moving again to British Columbia. One of the things that is really disheartening is the amount of pay that you get for being a licensed tradesman in Ontario. So your average on Indeed, so I just looked it up on Indeed, what the average Ontario hourly wage for an automotive service technician. So that is what I am. I'm a licensed automotive service technician. It's $27.30 an hour. That's your average. So it's not bad. It's pretty good. But the thing is that's an average over everything. The more north you get, the more northern communities you go up to, like say Timmins, Ontario, you're going to be starting to make a lot more money, $35 to $40 an hour, because they have to compete with the mining industry. If people, they need to make money. So if they're going to be at a point where they can't make money, they're going to go to the mines where they can be a heavy equipment technician, where technically you do not need a license in heavy equipment to work on heavy equipment. Now, it's a huge benefit if you have it, but where you could be making $40, $50 an hour. And if you get certain positions, like I worked in at a mine in Nunavut, which is a long way, but I was making over $100,000 to $150,000 a year. Now, those jobs are very few and far between, and you can get them, but a lot of those jobs are so niche and so small that as much as you're making that money, it also drives up the average salary. So when I was looking in Ontario before we decided to move to Alberta, the average price that I was getting for Toronto and stuff like that was about $25 an hour. So I'm sorry, but Toronto is way too expensive for $25 an hour. So you would definitely have to have two income streams coming in for that amount of money, especially if you're going to live, rent, and that's being licensed. That's not being an apprentice. So in Canada, you need to have an apprenticeship. You have to go through an entire program that basically teaches you how to be a technician, and it takes about 4 years of your life to do that. You need to get 6,500 hours in the trade, and you have to go to school for 2 months at a time in Ontario. You have to go to school for 2 months at a time for 3 sessions. So in total, you get 6 months. In Alberta, you have to go 4 times for 2 months each. Now, that's a huge loss to yourself. You have to go on EI. Usually there's not a lot of help, and it's all up to you. You have to pay your tuition. You have to pay your books. You have to pay for boots, safety glasses, all of these things add up really quickly. So just going to college for your first time, I know myself, it costs about $4,000 to go there. And thankfully I had friends from when I originally went to college where I could live with them rent free or for very little rent, which was great. But most people don't have that luxury or that benefit. So the other part of it is when you're an apprentice, you're definitely not making $27 an hour. The problem with that is you're going to be most likely, if you're at a starting position and you're going to your level 1, you're going to be making, in most places, minimum wage in Ontario. So that's a huge problem for especially someone who's getting into the trade, where you're going to be making minimum wage for at least a year. Some places, I'm not saying everywhere, some places will pay more. A lot of dealers, they do pay more for their apprentices, and they pay a lot more because they have training and that kind of stuff, and you'll kind of get a little acceleration in your career. But unfortunately, a lot of people just can't afford to pay more than that. Now, the beautiful thing about Alberta, which is one of the reasons we moved out here, my spouse, she's an apprentice. And in Alberta, they actually have in their legislation that apprentices have to make a certain percentage of the wage of a technician. So say your average wage is, which in Alberta, the average wage is $35.72. So a level 1 apprentice will say make 55% of that wage. So you're guaranteed to make at least 50% of the wage. So that's like $17 an hour. That's great. As a level 1, you're making at least $17 an hour. And the other thing is that every year that you get another level, your percentage increases. So you're guaranteed a raise every time. That gives a lot of people financial stability, and it gives people a lot more opportunities to want to stay in the trade. Now, I have talked to apprentices before where they're working for a company and they're stuck at like $18 an hour until they complete their apprenticeship, and then they get bumped up to the regular hourly rate, which could be anywhere from $25 to $30 an hour in Ontario, and they're having a hard time making ends meet. So when it comes down to like tooling and stuff, you got to buy your own tools. That's not free. It doesn't just magically come out of the air. So you're going to be spending thousands upon thousands of dollars on tools. And as much as Canadian Tire and Princess Auto and places like that, they're great for starting off, when you get into the nitty gritty of doing it every single day, those tools just unfortunately don't have the quality standards that other tools do, like Snap-on, Mac, Matco. So you're going to end up starting to buy those tools, which are really expensive. Now, for tax breaks and stuff like that, and grants, like the apprenticeship program in Canada does give you a $1,000 grant if you're a man and $2,000 if you're a woman for completing a level, which is fantastic. Hey, I'll take free money, but it's taxed, so you'll get about $750 after the tax is removed on your income tax. So you got to remember to report that, or they'll come after you. So that $750 didn't really offset the cost of $4,000 to go to school that year, and it definitely didn't offset the cost of tooling. Now, when I went to try to get my tooling paid for through taxes to get a tax break, you have to meet a certain threshold, or it basically won't do anything. Even though it is for your trade and it is for your job, it doesn't help very much. Like, I think the most I got one year, I claimed $2,500 worth of tools, and I got maybe $30 back for that. So there's no real incentive. That's the problem. There's no incentive to be in the trades. And if you're not teaching people the trades and you want everybody to go to college or university to be an engineer or a doctor, which is fine. Hey, if that's what you want to do, go do it. Being a tradesman or a tradesperson, I should say, is grueling hard work. It's your body is going to take it's going to take a toll on your body, no matter what trade you end up in, whether it's welding, heavy equipment, truck and coach, automotive, HVAC. Like you're doing manual physical labor, and the amount of payoff that you get sometimes isn't worth what you go through. Now, it's nice to make money throughout the first 3 years of your apprenticeship, or 4 years of apprenticeship, depending on where you are, which is fantastic. You're making money. But when it comes down to after that, now you have all these tools you paid for, you have school that you've gone to 3 or 4 times, depending on where you live, and you might be making $25 an hour. Now, there's been kind of an exodus in Ontario, especially for us. Like, we moved out to Alberta. Why did we move out to Alberta? Well, that's because money, bar none. Salary, the salary was much higher over here, over $40 an hour for the northern community that we were living in. Why wouldn't I take that? Like, the cost of living, people to say, oh, it's crazy, the cost of living, we're paying the same if not less as a northern community in Ontario. So I don't think so. And when we actually got here, we were surprised at how cheap stuff was, especially since you don't pay, basically the taxes are just federal. So you don't pay really provincial taxes for everything. Or is it provincial to federal? Can't remember. But basically, when you buy something for $1, you only get charged one tax. You don't get charged a provincial and a federal tax. You don't get charged both, which is great because you save money on that. And the fuel here, especially with fuel prices right now, the fuel prices are insane in Ontario and in British Columbia. They're upwards of $2 a liter. Here, they're still 150 to 160, maybe 170 in certain places, but like, that's a huge difference, and it'll make a huge impact on your life. So it's just one of those things to think about when, especially when getting into the trades. A lot of people have looked down on the trades for years, saying that, oh, you're just a low class, you're just a blue collar worker. And there are plenty of very intelligent and smart people in the trades, and that's what we need. We need more people in general in the trades, but we want to get more people that would maybe consider, instead of going to engineering to become an engineer, if you have that extra capacity, you can be a tradesman. There's nothing, or a tradesperson. There's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with being a tradesperson. Now, the biggest thing when you're in the trade is, don't be afraid to move. Don't be afraid to take other opportunities that come up. If somebody calls you from a different city and they say, hey, we're going to pay you double your wage, take it, go. Like, make the money, because without it, people aren't going to start realizing, and businesses aren't going to start paying more for people. In the area we were living in before, Sault Ste. Marie, there was a few months ago, I believe it was about 6 months ago, they had a article come out that they were lacking tradespeople, and they can't find any for whatever reason. And the reason for that was because people were leaving. People were leaving Sault Ste. Marie and leaving the area because they're not paying enough. It's that simple. Why would I stay making $25 to $30 an hour when I can literally move to a different province where I can make $40 to $45 an hour? That's a $10 an hour increase, and the cost of living is the same. Just something to think about. I think one of the biggest things that they need to start doing is promoting it in at the secondary school level, and really trying to push for kids and teenagers, even adults. If you want to jump into a trade, go ahead, jump into a trade. It's not going to be a bad thing. It's a great thing to jump into a trade. It's always something that you'll carry with you for the rest of your life. Even if you complete it, you do your 4 years and you don't want to be a tradesperson anymore, that's up to you. You can go do whatever you want after that. It's just one of those things that's disheartening to see that there's this huge cry for tradespeople, that we're going to be in a huge deficit of tradespeople, and it's gonna hurt the economy. It's gonna hurt everybody. It's gonna hurt a lot of industries, and they're not fixing it. This has been going on for over 15 years. Like, my guidance counselor had told us that there was a huge lack of welders and a huge lack of automotive tradespeople, and they can't get people to go into those trades. Well, it doesn't help when all you're promoting is university. The university is the key to the promised land. Well, honestly, it's not. It's not always the key. Everything fits for certain people. If you don't want to get greasy and dirty like a tradesperson, then don't go do that. But if it's something that interests you, there's plenty of different opportunities that you can do. And it's just one of those things that people seem to forget. But that's my spiel. Just like it or don't, it's the way it is. That's why we left.